Hi, welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, a podcast focused on holistic health, nutrition, biohacking, and more. I'm your host, Brittany Ford, registered holistic nutritionist and self-proclaimed biohacker. During the last 10 years, I've focused on healing my gut and hormonal issues through lifestyle changes, nutrition, and of course, biohacks. And now I teach others to do the same. I'm so excited you're joining me today, so let's dive right in. Okay, so welcome to another episode of Biohacking Brittany, or Biohacking with Brittany, I guess is what it's called. Thank you everyone for being here today. This episode is really cool because I have Ian Hart with me today, and he wrote a book called Healing Hacks, which I read the whole thing and related to so much of it, which I definitely cannot say for all of the health books that I read. So it's all about biohacking and his health journey. And he's also a fitness expert. He owns a couple companies. He had a wellness space in Costa Rica for a while. So he's definitely done a lot of things. So Ian Hart, welcome to the show. We're so excited you're here.
Thank you for having me, Brittany. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I looked into your bio and you were in peak condition at one point, mentally, physically, professionally. And then your health kind of started to deteriorate and you started getting these symptoms and things kind of went downhill. So, can you take us back to that time and kind of explain what happened and how it made you feel?
Sure, yeah. And, I have a delineation point when things really went downhill, but it was a buildup. And in the book, I talk about allostatic load, and I probably have a lot of stressors that caused the kind of, the thing to break, the camel's back. And yeah, I had been exposed to medications previously. I had amalgam fillings, which I talk about in the book. And I was in amazing shape what I considered healthy and in amazing shape. Like I was physically and mentally fit and I can push through things, but I wasn't truly healthy. And I was, burning candles on both ends. I was, pushing hard professionally, physically. And I decided to run a race while I was under the weather. I was sick, and in hindsight, I probably was having a reaction to all the gluten I was eating. I was carb loading at the time with a lot of pasta,
Right.
and had no idea that I had issues with that. And anyways, I ran the race, which I shouldn't have done. I learned a lot from that because my ego got the best of me. Thought I was invincible, and I got really sick after that. I pushed through the race. I didn't race to compete, but I still ran it. And after that, it just went downhill from there. I got walking pneumonia, and then I was given an atom bomb of an antibiotic, which wasn't even approved for the market, I found out, and is basically like a low dose of chemotherapy. And that's when things really got bad. And the person that I was before was no longer there. And I had to basically come to terms with the fact that that person that I was, and it took a couple of years for that, is gone, and I won't get that back. And that began my healing journey. And I hit a bottom in the hospital where I was just like, okay, this is, I'd rather die than live the way I'm living. But I made a pact and commitment to myself that if I get out of this situation, that I will share this with the world, because no one should have to go through this. And one of the things that I don't get into in the book, but I'd like to address it here, I don't know if I've addressed it in other podcasts before, is that I had a lot of the symptoms of what autistic kids would go through. And I have a pretty good idea of what they go through. And it is pretty unbearable and intense. And I have strong emotional connection to that, because these kids go through some of the most painful things and they can't verbalize and communicate. I was lucky enough that I was still mentally and physically strong when I went through it, and I was able to think about it, cope with it to some degree, and verbalize what was happening. And I started a lot of healing with using what was put out on the internet as healing for autistic kids.
Wow.
And so, and they, funny enough, they've been kind of book burned and taken off Amazon and other places. So
Mm.
so that, yeah, that was the start of my journey. And I just learned over 10 years and I was lucky enough to have a business where I was able to utilize all the profits basically, um, to help my health. So I was learning and growing, and becoming more like using my profession to grow. And so that's where I was, and I realized like I got to share this knowledge with people, because every time I speak to somebody about it, they would kind of lean in a little bit more and ask me more questions, and then I was like, whoa, I gotta.
Mm.
After the 10th or 20th time, I was like, all right, this is now my time to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting that you say some of your symptoms and signs were parallel to that of autistic kids. So, what were the parallels there? And in terms of like the healing remedies and things that you found online that are harder to find now, especially with Google's
Yeah,
way that they're cracking down on health websites, which is just ridiculous.
right.
Um, like, what was that? I'm so curious.
So I had brain inflammation. I didn't know
Okay.
what it was at the time, but I had serious brain inflammation. Like, I mean, I had brain damage from it. My brain stem was like, it felt like my brain was pushing outside of the skull, which it
Wow.
probably was, but I don't know because I never got tested. But I had just this swelling in the back of my head for a year. It felt like someone was stabbing me in the back of the brain stem. I never had dealt with headaches my whole life, and this was like a headache for a year from hell. I had severe gut dysfunction.
Mm.
I had kind of dementia, and the way I like to look at it is like, dementia and Alzheimer's are basically the opposite end of the spectrum of autism in a way. Like, it's just older toxicity and poisoning buildup almost, or gut bacteria issues, and so I had those type of mental issues. I was like putting milk in the cabinets instead of back in the fridge. I was mixing up my words. Like, I was slightly dyslexic as a
Mm-hmm.
kid, and it became way worse. My speech pattern started changing. I became more like, I want to say, kind of childish like. Uh,
Okay.
and mind you, I was coming out of like, uh, part of the reason that got me into this is I had like military training. I went through OCS through the Marine Corps, so I thought I was like invincible, and I had this very like straightforward, kind of push through anything professional mindset. And then I went from that to like being like my mind didn't work. I was like more infantile kind of reaction to things because my brainstem was just on fire. So yeah, I had all these parallels to autism, and I started to, I did a lot of seeking and scouring the internet for anything and everything. And I tried a lot of things, and some of them made me worse, some of them made me better. And one of the things I came across was this girl who had healed herself, and it was on like a Facebook post, and she just posted like, "Get this book," and it was called "Healing Autism, Second Edition" or something like that. And so I was just open to anything. So I bought the book and started reading it, and I found out about a parasite cleanse in there, and I started to do parasite cleanse, and that was the first thing, like, whoa, I'm loaded with parasites all over my body. And that was one of the first things that got me in that direction. And then I started to go deeper and deeper into other things that were healing autistic kids, and I started to realize that it worked, it was working. So yeah, there were so many different things that I did, which is part of what I put in the book, so that people can say, okay, this doesn't work, or this didn't work, and this maybe does. But yeah, it was interesting ride, and I'm still not 100% better. Uh,
Mm.
but I've done things. even recently after the book. You know, I tell people I launched the book, which helped me learn a ton just writing it. But then afterwards, I learned even more. So uh, I went in deeper into some hacking with that stuff as well. But yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah. I mean, it always is, honestly. Like the healing journey is never really finished or complete as much as we want it to be.
Right.
Um, but that sounds really cool. And it sounds like you really took ownership of your health. And a lot of people don't necessarily do that or don't know how to do that. Um, and I think that's really, yeah, I just think it's remarkable that you also wrote a book about it afterwards to help people for that very reason. Um, would you consider writing a second book, like a follow up with your most recent biohacks and healing modalities?
Yeah, I thought about it. That'll probably be a while down the road. Uh,
Hmm.
it did take a lot of energy out of me to write the book. But now I have a little bit more free time on my hands because I just sold one of my main locations for my training facilities. So yeah, we'll see. I'll have to sit down and get to the drawing board on
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
So, aside from the parasite cleanse, what were some of the concrete, TSN turning points or solutions that really helped you? I like in your book, you have so many different things, and it's so great to read about them. But like looking back now, what were some of the really key things that you did?
Yeah. So the lowest hanging fruits, which I tell anybody and everybody, uh,
Hmm.
are one, your breath, how you breathe, and then there's breathing techniques like I go over. There's many numerous breath work, and now it's kind of mainstream.
Yeah.
But you have the Wim Hof method, Butenko method. But if you're not breathing correctly, no matter what you do, it really won't help. So breathing in through the nose, becoming a nose breather. A great book just came out on this, which confirmed a lot of the stuff that I was going through and speaking about, which is called Breathe.
Mm.
And the guy goes deep into how it changes every aspect of your life if you're not breathing correctly. And so the whole book is about it. And he actually did a study where he plugged his nose for 10 days and they tracked, his like blood sugar and his oxygen levels and all this stuff. And so if you're not nose breathing, you're going to be sick. Eventually, you will eventually end up with diseases or some type of health issue. So that's one thing, breathing correctly. And then if you can do breath work like the Wim Hof method is a great
Mm.
choice. It's fun. People enjoy it. And then the second one is castor oil. It's so simple and
Mm.
it gives you so many benefits that, putting a castor oil pack on your belly or on your liver will help increase glutathione. It'll help balance out the microbiome. It will break biofilm so that your immune system can get to these bacteria that are harming you or making your immune system lowered. It, I mean, there's just a long list. It has all the qualities of like, I heard, I interviewed this doctor and she said it has all the qualities of a snake oil, but it delivers actually on all these things. And this is scientifically proven. So they used to anoint kings to the throne with it back in the old days. So we know that it has power. Now, people with gut issues, there are some places, and I've done this before, where they have parasite cleanses with the internal use of castor oil.
Mm.
If you have gut issues, that's something you want to stay away from because castor oil does come from a seed, and you want to stay away from seeds if you have gut issues. Um, seeds and skin. So, doing castor packs where you put the oil on a wool, what kind of a wool fabric, and then you place it on your gut, wrap it in saran wrap, and then you leave it on overnight, ideally, and you can put a heater on it to have it permeate more. But those two things are two things that can help get people very far in their healing practice.
Mm. Mm. Interesting you say castor oil packs because when I first started my healing journey, like over 10 years ago as well, it was through a naturopath. And that was one of the first things she recommended was castor oil pack. And I think I did a couple back then, but I honestly don't think I've done one since. I kind of forgot about them, to be honest. But I mean, it's like you said, they're so rooted. There's such a history of them.
Right.
It's very interesting. And I know you're also a Wim Hof instructor. So, in terms of, Wim Hof is obviously gaining popularity and stuff now. How have you found that type of breathing has changed you physically or mentally over time?
That's a good question because I've I've wavered with that, um, because there's been periods where I've like really pushed myself with it, and then I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or uh,
Mm,
so, and that's such as life. So, uh, sometimes it'll resonate with people at certain times, but overall, um, people will go through phases with it. They have to, because when you first do it, it releases an enormous amount of adrenaline, and adrenaline most people wouldn't be used to, especially if you're sick. And
mm,
so the body will adapt to that. So you'll have a kind of adaptation phase where in the beginning it feels really amazing. And then later on, maybe it doesn't feel the same, or you have a harder time holding the breath. And for people listening, Wim Hof method is you do about 30 to 50 breaths. This is their basic breathing method. You do 30 to 50 breaths. Uh, you inhale and then exhale all the way out. You empty your lungs and then you hold your breath. And because you've hyperoxygenated the body, you can hold your breath a lot longer with your lungs empty. And the benefits of this are, I mean, numerous and varied. It's like it just adapts you for becoming more efficient at utilizing oxygen. And really, when we talk about life and longevity, the name of the game is how efficient you use oxygen. That's really like the basics, is what it comes down to. So the more efficiently you use oxygen, and also clear out, the CO2 and waste, your body just becomes more well-oiled machine. And so that's what the Wim Hof method is doing. You learn how to hyperoxygenate the body. You exhale and hold. At one point, the CO2 is very low, the oxygen is very high, and then as you're holding, the CO2 increases. And then at one point, your body's going to trigger, your brain's going to trigger, your diaphragm will trigger to take that breath when the CO2 is too high. And then you take a deep breath in, and all of the cells that are screaming for oxygen, especially the areas that need healing. And this is what I found out through the years, is that uh, they will scream for oxygen more, and it'll help detox those cells. And so you'll get oxygen to the areas that you need it most. And so, it's helped my brain function. It's helped all the damage I've had to tissue, like muscular tissue as well. And yeah, it's been, like I said, I go off and on with it, and I also change up. Like I had been doing breath work for probably 10 years prior to that, and so I always mix it up with different type of breathing, and that's the best part about breathing. Like there's the Wim Hof method, but really he had no method, and you can play around with breathing. You can do the breath holds and inhale and hold. You can exhale and hold. You can do breathing through the nose, breathing through the mouth. You can rotate the breathing through the nose and the mouth, and they all activate different parts of the brain. They're all helpful to different parts of the body, and we're kind of just scratching the surface on what the potential is for some of this stuff. So yeah, it's changed me in numerous ways, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, over the years, and sometimes depending on what I want to use it for, I'll target that thing.
yeah. I'm kind of the same way with breathing or like breath work more so. Sometimes I'm super into it and I'm doing it every single day. And then sometimes I just haven't done it for a few months.
Right,
It's similar with me with meditation as well. Like, all of these hacks and these things that we can do, sometimes it's too much to try and do every single one every single day.
right,
So I kind of, yeah, I just go in phases of what I think I need and what I'm into. It's kind of the beauty of it, honestly.
absolutely.
So, in terms of like your own biohacking or hacking regimen and routine today, like what does that look like? What are you currently into?
Yeah, so Right now, I still do the breath work. What I've been doing with the breath work is inhaling and holding my breath. And I
Mm.
feel like I've been getting a lot more benefit from that. Um, and I recently did stem cell therapy. Another
Oh.
thing that kids with autism have done that found amazing results. And I found that to be extremely helpful for me. Like I felt brain inflammation went down. It started healing a lot of things. And one of the things that it works well in combination with, and the other thing that the Wim Hof method does as well, or intense type of breathing, is the lungs. There's a study that shows the lungs actually make stem cells. But when you get more oxygen in the body, you get the stem cells to the places that need it. And so I've been doing inhaling, 50, 60 breaths through the nose or something like that, deep. So I've been off gassing the CO2, and I've been inhaling through the nose. So I'll take a deep, 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 full breath, like I'm talking about. My lungs are completely full, and then I'll actually sip in a little bit more air. And this is proven in the neuroscience, like one way to de-stress as well. So I'll breathe in, and then I'll take another double breath, breathe in again, and then slowly exhale out through the mouth and do a long exhale. And this is great for anxiety, but it's also great
Mm.
for just getting off gassing the CO2 out of your lungs. And I'll do a bunch of breaths like that. And then all of a sudden, my oxygen levels will be high, and I'll take a full deep breath in, and I'll squeeze oxygen to like my body, as well as time myself just to see, okay, can I hold my breath longer? So there's been periods where I will time myself and then I won't time myself. Now I'm in a phase where I'm timing myself to see how long I can hold my breath. And then I also just go for jogs and breathe only through the nose purposefully. And I do it intentionally focusing on nose breathing. And that's been really good for me as well. And then other than that, like I just, diet is essential. Uh,
Mm.
So I just always focus on eating from my gut because my gut is so damaged. So the hacks that I've been doing for that, which I guess you can call them hacks, but uh, I I do like a absorbing of toxins and bad bacteria of the gut, and then afterwards I'll replace it with I make my own raw yogurt and my own raw kefir. So I'll use like a GI detox that has activated charcoal, bentonite clays, etc., and that pull the toxins out. And then uh, I'll replace that with the good bacteria.
That's really cool, making your own yogurt. I wanna try that. That's
Oh,
that's awesome.
it's amazing. Once you do it, it's hard to go back. I mean, I don't buy store bought yogurt unless it is raw. Like in Costa Rica,
Right.
we would get that, but so I have to do only raw, and I have to make my own in the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So what does your diet typically look like then? Like, sounds like you're eating a lot of raw dairy.
Yeah, so when my gut issue first came, I was like allergic to everything. I became allergic to everything, and
Mm.
to the point where for like 2 years I ate literally 5 foods, and it was like torture. And I still to this day I can't uh, I can't eat processed dairy. I can't have gluten. I can't have nightshades. Uh, And so I literally stick to kind of a ape paleo diet, which is like an autoimmune
Right.
diet. I have a lot of like meat stocks, foods. Um, I eat, yeah, basically vegetables, some type of fruits, a lot of fruits mess me up, and then raw dairy. And it's similar to like almost a Western A price.
Mm.
I eat like they would back in the day. Like basically, all you had access to was like fish, shrimp, game, wild game, dairy, raw dairy, and fruits and vegetables. And that's basically how I eat.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's very nutrient dense, which is what you want.
Exactly.
I'm kind of similar. I don't do well with lactose or casein. I don't do well with gluten either. So I'm pretty much paleo. I don't eat nightshades either.
Right.
But it's not 100%, right? So I try not to be too strict about it, because in the past I've gotten a little not neurotic about it, but just too stressed about it, and then that causes health issues, so it kind of backfires.
Yeah,
So
I understand that.
yeah, so it's really about like finding the balance of what works for you. But I definitely don't do the raw dairy, and I would be interested in doing that. It's something I've thought about before. But you can buy it in Canada. You just have to go straight to the farmer.
Right.
So compared to like a Whole Foods, um, I think it's like a bit less strict than the US, but it's still not super, super easy. You got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a war on raw dairy. That's another thing. Like, just since
mm,
we're talking about it, uh,
yeah.
raw dairy is one of the best. It is considered medicine in lots of ways. I mean, there was literally the raw dairy diet that people use just for healing the gut. And so this stuff can all be found on Weston A. Price, and it's been vilified purposefully, uh,
Hmm.
because they don't the commodities of milk. They don't want people using raw dairy. It heals you. It tastes better. It's better for you. And then they say you can get listeria and all these other things, which is not true. If you actually do the research, there's about an equal amount of poisoning from raw and processed. And processed actually goes bad quickly. So there's a lot of people that get milk, poisoned from raw processed milk. So so when people hear that, stay away from raw dairy, you need to cook it, and it's important that you find out where you're getting it from, and that they're making sure that they are doing healthy practices. So
Right.
the source of it is extremely important.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely don't want raw dairy from a conventional cow
Right, exactly.
that's got like hormones and antibiotics put into it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned like the castor oil packs and then the breath work, but are there any other biohacks that you recommend to people who are looking to start today? I mean, maybe they're trying to heal from something, or maybe they're just trying to level up their health in general.
Yeah, if someone's trying to heal, I've done a lot of things that were not correct for me, or pushed me too fast.
Mm,
And healing is an art. And I tell people, use your intuition and look for answers, because you'll find the path that's necessary for you to take at that moment in time. And sometimes I guide people through that. But um, there is no next thing that someone needs to do. Like,
mm,
and this is very important that I should say, there's no specific diet. Like, I follow the 8 diet because I have an autoimmune issue. So if you have an autoimmune issue, it may be something you want to try out, but some of the foods in there might not work for you. It doesn't mean the 8 diet doesn't work for you. And people will just say, like, oh, I'm doing this diet, I'm doing X, Y, and Z diet. So use your discretion and just listen to your body, is what I would say with
mm,
food. I've done juice fastings that made me worse, a lot
mm,
worse. And I think it was because of the oxalates and some of the greens that I was using. And, you hear people like, oh, you got to do juice fasting. So I talk about juicing and fasting in the book, but for some people, it might make them worse if they have a gut issue, if they can't digest certain things. So healing and hacking and stuff is also about, most importantly, what not to do and what to eliminate. So that's one
mm,
of the things that I want to go over. And then in terms of what to do, um, yeah, I mean, I have like a whole process of things of how to go about healing. So and the step one, I'll just reiterate that again, is eliminating the things that are making you sick, right? So if you're not breathing properly, like I said, you have to start breathing correctly instantly. If you're eating foods that are causing you to get worse, uh, you need to focus on that. Or I would highly recommend, analyzing your diet, because you will never get better, no matter what hacks you do, no matter what,
mhm,
you just won't get better. And then once you figure out what to eliminate, then you can start incorporating certain things like like the sauna is good for people, but some people, again, it's not. If you aren't detoxing properly, you may just release all these toxins into your bloodstream and then not be able to get them out. Um, so using it with caution. It's great for mold detoxing, people with Lyme, um,
Mhm.
but I was using it, and then I haven't. I don't know if it was an MTHFR gene mutation type thing
Mm.
where I wasn't detoxing, but that made me worse. So I did this whole specific sauna detox, and it made me worse. I started to get like numbness down my legs, and it's also why they say, I guess people for MS, they're not supposed to use it. People who have MS. So, but with that being said, hot cold therapy can be very, very beneficial for everybody. So, like
Mm.
going into an ice bath and using a sauna and taking a cold shower, uh, it helps strengthen the cells, and that's what the Wim Hof method does. So the stronger the arterioles are and the cells are, by pumping them, right, and getting the lymphatic system moving, which is one of the first things that I recommend people do to get healthy, is get their lymphatic system going, which is why I recommended castor oil, because it moves the lymph system, and the lymph can be looked at as like the sewage system. Imagine if you have all this sewage in you and it's not being moved, and then it's going to leak into other areas, and that's where we start to see brain toxicity or joints and inflammation, stuff like that. And so moving the lymph, and there's many ways to move the lymph, but Wim Hof breathing does it, castor oil does it, light exercise, dry brushing, jumping up and down, hot and cold therapy, because you're pumping the cells. So there's contraction and expansion, and we're always contracting
Mm.
and expanding. And so when you do the breathing, for example, when you exhale, when you hyperoxygenate, contrary to what people think, it's a vasoconstrictor, meaning the veins constrict tighter. And CO2 is a vasodilator. So when you go hyperoxygen, your veins constrict and your cells constrict. And then when you get high CO2, your arterioles open up, and now they're ready to receive more oxygen. So you're literally opening up the arterioles, you're training and strength training the arterioles, the cells, and then you get more oxygen into the body, into the brain. And another thing that people I found fascinating was that low CO2, or a lack of ratio of CO2 in the brain, is connected with almost every single mental health issue, from schizophrenia to anxiety, etc. So just doing that breathing stuff, you'll see some of those things cleared up. Depression, um, and then so yeah, moving the lymphatic
Mm.
system, getting the toxins out. Again, if you have gut issues, then um, you may not process all this stuff out, and that's where you want to heal the gut. And that's why the first line of defense is one, healing the gut, so that when you process out the junk, it's actually able to move out. And that's also why kefir and yogurt, especially raw, is so good, because it helps gobble up the toxins. uh,
Mm.
Gobbles up the heavy metals, it gobbles up mold, it helps build the good bacteria, it helps heal the gut and seal the gut if you have leaky gut. um, so so yeah, it helps. Glutathione, castor oil helps glutathione. Raw milk helps glutathione, which is the master antioxidant. Most people who are sick have very low glutathione. You're depleting your glutathione. Usually, it's good in minerals. Magnesium is something that almost everybody who's had prolonged sickness needs a lot of. I recommend for that Remag, which is 100% absorbable, but also, the subtitle of my book is Bring Your Body Back to Nature. And we get all these things from nature. We tend to think we're separate from nature now, and we're not. We are nature, and the more we disconnect from nature, the sicker we become on every single level, mentally, physically, spiritually. So the more we connect with nature, right? So wearing rubber soled shoes all the time is not good for your health. it will make you sick. You have positive and negative ions. We're exposed to way more positive ions, which, for example, Wi-Fi gives positive ions. Negative ions are found in nature, and they neutralize positive ions. And so, for example, waterfalls have high levels of negative
Mm.
ions. So spending time connected to the earth, like putting your feet in sand, especially, if it's sand with water, you get even more negative ions. It's like charging the body. And as I put it in the book, we are batteries. We are
Mm.
literal batteries. We're antennas, um, and we're receiving and giving off frequency at all times. And nature is more in alignment with that frequency. So the more time we spend out in nature, usually mentally, emotionally, physically, better we are. And the funny thing is, I wrote that because I'd experienced it to some degree. I grew up, always playing in the woods and stuff. But it was after I wrote the book that I spent 6 months of just completely in nature, immersed in nature in Costa Rica. And I really got to understand how the body heals itself over time and spending time in the ocean, right? All the minerals and the flushing out of the toxins. And it's believed we came from the ocean, we came from salt water. And even like in the womb, we're in a solution like that. And so being in the ocean, being connected with nature, uh, being rooted on the ground is extremely powerful and almost necessary for healing.
I love that. I love everything you just said.
Yeah,
um, yeah, I just think nature heals, exactly what you said, and in so many different ways. And we have so much opportunity to really use it, instead of, these more expensive, elaborate things like, going down to the beach or the lake can be just as healing, if not more.
right.
And I think it's awesome that you really advocate for that. And obviously, so do I. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. Like, I just love listening to you talk, and I feel like you provide so much information. So, where can people find you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to healinghacks.net. That's where I have my book. I'm on Facebook as Ian Hart, or it's actually EarthFit is my training facility name. And then backpainrelief4life.com with the number 4. I specialize in back pain relief as one of the things that I do. So yeah, those are the 3 places: healinghacks.net, backpainrelief4life.com, and then you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Ian R. Hart.
Awesome. I will add all of those to the show notes, so everyone can find you and connect with you and get your book and learn more about your process and your healing journey. Yeah. And so thanks so much for coming on. This was great.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. As always, feel free to screenshot this episode and tag me if you'd like me to respond. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you have a question about your health, my DMs are always open and I'm currently taking new clients. Thanks, and see you next time.